Welcome to Free Soul Awakening, the podcast that invites you to liberate yourself from conditioning, fear, and self-doubt. And remember that your soul was never meant to be caged, it was meant to be free. Hey guys, I am Ashley and I am your host and I'm an evidential medium and I am super excited for today's episode because I have one of the most amazing, down to earth, and honestly coolest woman I've ever met. My life coach, Bridget. Yay!
Ah.
Oh, I'm gonna add an applause where people are like, ah. So first of all, thank you, Bridget, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for that intro. I'm blushing, if anyone
Uh,
can see that. Thank
well,
you.
I think you're cool.
Thank you. I think you're
Yeah,
cool too.
thanks. All right, guys. So on today's episode, we are going to talk about spiritual bypassing and somatic processing and somatization.
Yes.
Is it somatization?
Yep. Perfect.
Somatization, which in layman's terms is when emotional stress or mental health issues show up as physical symptoms in your body. And Bridget's going to tell us all about it. So, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do, Bridge? And
Yeah. So I have my own little business, Indigo Danu Healing, and I do what I'm calling biofield therapy and holistic therapy. I started out coaching, but I kind of moved in that direction because what I do is somewhere in between a coach and a therapist. I'm never, and I'm not licensed at all in Western therapy, but what I do is somewhere in between there. Um, so yeah, biofield therapy is a lot like Reiki. In fact, some of what I do does involve Reiki, but I've also trained with in shamanic healing as well. And I use a lot of my own Celtic ancestral healing in my sessions. So it looks a lot like a Reiki session for the customer, like you're the client. You come in, lay down, relax, and I work in your biofield. And you can use biofield therapy for literally anything. And then the holistic therapy sessions are actually a lot of what we are talking about today, not spiritually bypassing and then processing things that are stored in your body. And I use a few different methods for that, but I think we're going to talk more about that in our questions today. So I'll save that. But yeah, and I'm located in Buffalo, New York, and I work here in person and on Zoom.
yeah, I mean,
So
I see you twice a week or try or not twice a week, twice a month. I try to anyway. And
yeah.
yeah, we do everything on Zoom. And
Yeah.
yeah, we've been working together for like two years?
I think it's going on 3 now.
Shut up.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Wow. And it's been awesome, honestly.
Yeah,
Like
it
you're
has.
awesome at what you do, for
Thank
real.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, you're an awesome client.
Oh,
I always love seeing you.
thank you. And Bridge, where can people find you if they want to like work with you or book with you? Like what?
I love this. It's
Yeah.
www.indigo, Danu is DANU, healing.com.
Word.
So it's indigo, the color, DANU, healing.com.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about spiritual bypassing. So how do you define spiritual bypassing, first of all?
So, in quick terms, I describe it as using spirituality to like neglect, possibly ignore, or push down any of your physical or psychological things that may be happening. So sometimes I call it like using spirituality to get high type of
Mm.
thing, to say it simply.
Never even heard of the term until you brought it up maybe 2 weeks ago or a month ago. I don't know when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
And you were saying, I just wanted to make sure you're not spiritually bypassing. I didn't even know what in the world that was. Is it kind of like everyone thinks everything's light and love and great, but they're not really actually dealing with their
Yes.
own issues?
Yes. It is buying into what I like to call the Instagram memes of high vibes only, love and light. And I do love and light, I do. But if you're using it to avoid dealing with your anger, to avoid dealing with your frustration, any emotions that may be under the surface, then you are spiritually bypassing. And I know we're going to talk about it in one of our questions, but I just want to point out that anger is not a low vibration emotion.
Mm.
I just feel like that's a popular belief, and it's not. Anger is so helpful in understanding our boundaries.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do feel like when I'm angry, it's such a like surface level emotion, where it's just like there's so much underneath where
Yeah.
I'm not I'm yes, anger, I would describe it as anger, but it's really sadness or jealousy or some like deep rooted issue
Yeah.
that I'm struggling with.
Yeah. And there can be a lot under the surface that is causing irritation, and then it's coming out as anger too. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so what are some common signs that someone is spiritually bypassing rather than genuinely like healing or growing?
So, I actually have an example from a session I had today. I was on a call with a client, and she was venting about her current life situation, which she has every right to because she's under a lot of stress right now. And I had started talking about how she needs to set up some boundaries in the situation that she was venting about. And she had said, I was hoping I could just come here today and do a journey or a meditation with you and just walk away feeling better.
Mm.
I don't want to have to go and insert boundaries. And that is a real example for a lot of women, especially it's coming out in the research that I'm doing where women in this culture are taught to bury their emotions or not show their emotions to be more accepted, loved, right?
Yeah.
And when we have to actually stick up for ourselves or speak up for ourselves, it can be a very painful process for some people, for a lot of women too. We think it's easier to avoid having to set up the boundary and just go tell ourselves, "Oh, it'll be fine. Everything's fine. Love and light. I shouldn't be mad right now. I shouldn't be feeling this way.
Mm.
I can figure it. I can bury it down farther and do whatever I need to do to make the situation be peaceful instead of sticking up for yourself." And so that's like a very deep example of spiritual bypassing, but it is an example. Lighter examples, like, I mean, I was doing it to myself this past week. I was under a lot of stress because my paper is due and
Mm.
got all these things to do. I've got an event coming up for my business. So I have a lot of things that I need to do in a little bit of time. And then I was putting pressure on myself for not understanding why I couldn't like connect or meditate properly. But the spiritual state requires us to not be in survival mode to be able to access it properly. So, by trying to force myself into that state without actually addressing the feelings that I was feeling about being in survival mode, I wasn't like I was trying to override or spiritually bypass myself.
Mm.
And so I had to take time out and like actually deal with the feelings that I was having
Yeah.
about the survival mode stuff. And I actually had to go and take things off, physically take things off my plate, like give some shifts away at work and cancel some appointments um, to clear my schedule to bring myself back to balance. I couldn't just go and, try to meditate and just tell myself that everything is fine and then be fine.
Yeah,
So,
I feel like I struggle with that too. And I can tell when something's going on because I try to meditate daily. And I notice that when I struggle to meditate, that something's going on.
yeah,
And sometimes I feel like, okay, I can't meditate. Let me just watch TV. Like instead of
yeah,
actually addressing, obviously I'm in a fight or flight because I can't calm myself down to where I can meditate, even with a guided meditation, which I know the point isn't to quiet your mind, but for me to not even be able to do it, something's going on. And I'm just like, oh, I'll
yes,
just watch TV instead of journal or, you know,
yes.
talk to someone, I'm just so I can definitely relate to that for sure.
Yeah. And it's at the root of it, it's ignoring your feelings and pretending that everything is okay. Yeah. And I see a lot of it on like Instagram too, these motivational posts. And I don't have an example of one off the top of my head, but I know I see it a lot, and they can irk me sometimes because I'm like, that is terrible toxic advice for somebody who is going through a traumatic situation or has unresolved trauma.
Right.
Terrible. And if you are someone who is not feeling positive, even when you're trying to or reading stuff like that, it's because you're trying to spiritually bypass something that needs to get processed. So,
Mm. That's true. That's true. I mean, I feel like for my TikTok too, like I do post a lot of like positive things, but I also do try to be real and say, "Hey, this is what I'm dealing like I'm human. This is what
yeah.
I'm dealing with. I still deal with things. I have a therapist and a life coach, but I'm also trying to heal. I am always working on myself, so I do try to be positive and spread that, but I totally
Yeah,
totally
and
get that.
yes, and you're 100% right. I'm glad you said that because I wouldn't want to take away from spreading positivity, which is absolutely a thing that we need to start doing and that we should be doing. It's when you are the person who is reading the positive note and something still feels off in you when you're reading it, that's when you know, don't override the situation with that positive thought. Sometimes you need to work through it or process what's going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So what strategies or practices do you recommend to help clients stay grounded and work through the emotions that they might not want to work through?
So this depends on your resilience level and where you're at in being in touch with your emotions. So when I say that, there are some clients that I start to work with who they don't have any relationship with their body. Your body plays a huge role in your emotional intelligence, and that connection to your body plays a huge role in being able to process your emotions. So, if you are somebody who doesn't feel very connected to your body, and signs of that would be like if you were to close your eyes and feel into your body, if you're like, okay, I'm not feeling anything, that's a sign that you might have a little bit of disconnection there. So, what I would say to somebody who is in that position, it would be more of maybe taking time every night to check in with your body. And the more you do it, the more your body will start responding and you can build that connection. But just sitting and maybe consciously moving through each part of your body and just trying to feel what's there and then breathing through that and allowing it to move through you and release itself. And then if you are more connected to your body and you are more connected to your emotions and you're having a situation where you're like in it, having the emotions kind of feels like a little bit of a crisis, the best thing you can do is breathe. The breath brings you back to the present moment. So allowing these feelings to move through your body and not trying to stop them or stuff them down. So if you have to cry, cry. If you have to yell, scream into a pillow or whatever you need to do, not yell, not yell or scream at somebody, but like, get in your
You're like,
car and
"Mom,
shut the
come
door and
here."
let it out. Yeah. Um, it just depends on the emotion that you're trying to process too. But just let your body have its moment of letting it move through. Don't try to trap it. Don't try to shove it down. Just breathe your way through it. Your breath is also one of the things that can, again, bring you back to center and keep you grounded. You can also, if you are in the type of situation where you can walk out of the room or leave the situation and come back to it, taking a walk barefoot in nature is extremely helpful in being able to ground yourself and bringing yourself back to center. And I would say, if you're going through it, breathe, let your emotions move through. I believe it's like 14 or 22 seconds that it takes for an emotion to move through.
Wow.
And then when you feel like you have come back to center enough, that's when you should or could take action in a situation.
Yeah. I feel like I definitely still struggle with that. Sometimes it's hard for me to feel. If you ask, like when you said, oh, when I ask clients like how did your body feel or how do you feel? I sometimes I don't feel anything. And I've been working on it so hard. So I've been allowing myself to cry
Yeah.
lately, which is a struggle for me, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think breath for me at least like breath work and meditation and going out in nature and putting your feet in the grass is so important because everything's energy and people don't understand that you can actually feel the energy from the earth. Even if you're not physically feeling it, like you're still getting that energy. And
Yes.
it's so important that's going to ground you and kind of bring you back to center. And
It's
people
true.
think we're crazy, but man, it's not.
No, that's true. I use a lot of the earth energy in my biofield therapy appointments
Yeah.
because of that reason.
Yeah, I'm always, when I go hiking, I'm always touching the trees. I hug the trees. I never thought I'd be a tree hugger. You know, if you would
Yeah.
have told me 4 years ago, hey, you're gonna hug trees, okay, crazy lady, like get out of here. But I'm so different from that person I
Oh,
was 4 years. Like obviously the same personality and everything, but yeah, so different. Just I get the energy from the trees. It's important.
it
Nature
is.
is so important.
Nature is what I won't go off on a tangent about it, but basically, long story short, our energy waves that we give off align with the earth. So the more like naturally. So the more that you get out there, the more you'll become in tune with her vibration, the better you will feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, shall we talk about somatic processing?
Yes, I love this.
Okay, okay. So, what exactly is somatic processing and how does it differ from, traditional like talk therapy or coaching?
Yeah. So talk therapy is uh there's a bit of a psychoanalyzing in the situation when you're doing talk therapy. You're basically consulting the expert who is the therapist, and then the therapist will tend to tell you what's happening. Like you tell the therapist things, and then the therapist says, "This is why, and this is what you can do, and this is how you can go about, fixing that problem or coming back to alignment for yourself." Whereas somatic processing is it's stored emotions, energy, trauma, and wounding in that's like stored in your body. And processing that is a very personal thing. Like a therapist cannot tell somebody how to somatically process something. The person is completely in charge of it. So in a session, you have a guide. Like I can guide people through it, but the difference is you're not consulting an expert, you are the expert. So you are guided through moving these emotions that you find in your body, trauma, wounds, emotions, and accessing it in your body and then allowing it to move through you into completion. Because a lot of the times the stuff gets stored because we didn't allow the emotion to complete itself in the first place. We shoved it down, buried it. Emotional suppression among women is we're like pros at it.
So that's how it would get stored, like just through
Yeah,
suppressing and then it just kind of like sits somewhere.
yes, it does. So there's no, okay, as far as I know, there's no direct science yet that shows the exact process of what's happening in the body and why the body would store an emotion. So I can't say, oh, then the cells take the information and then they move it to this part of your body and then store it. But we do know that it happens. There is a theory that it's stored within the fascia,
Mm.
um, but that's a theory. It's still not proven. While I do love research and science, I'm also a firm believer in, well, if it worked, then it must be so, right? If you go and get a massage and they're massaging your fascia and then you emotionally feel better later, then it worked. You don't need data to prove that to you. Then you can go get massages and feel better for yourself, right? You just
Yeah,
like do your thing. Um, yeah.
yeah. That's crazy. I never knew that
Yeah.
that was like a
Yeah,
theory.
the research that I did for this semester in emotional suppression, every single interviewee, I did research with 6 different women. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's qualitative research. These are very in-depth interviews and then mining for data. It is a very long process. So in all 6 women, constipation was present. Like they all had constipation
Wow.
issues
Interesting.
um, from suppressing their
Hmm.
emotions. A lot of them had reproductive organ issues, digestion issues. Um, yeah. So we know it's happening,
Yeah.
but I don't know the exact process inside the body that makes it store it. Well, I do know that our bodies are highly intelligent, though, and it is a part of our intelligence system. The mind is actually not proven to exist in the brain. So the mind could be in the body, and that's, the body is storing it because that's where it's actually happening, but we just don't have that proof yet.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's wild to think of the connection between the mind and body and between trauma and, unresolved emotions becoming
Yeah.
physical symptoms. I didn't even think about that until I started to see you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, crap. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess what I was going to say was I don't know that there is like an exact guideline out there of, oh, if you, like, for example, I have clients and I will see patterns. A lot of women will have thyroid issues, usually caused by not wanting to stick up for themselves in their romantic relationship. So they won't speak about the things that they need. And there's a lot of overdoing and caretaking role in their romantic relationships instead of speaking up for themselves and having boundaries. So I will see a lot of thyroid issues in those situations. So there are
Mm.
patterns. Like I will see things in people that I'm surprised to learn that too. Like my one client I had, she was storing a lot of resentment towards her mom or her upbringing in her knees.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so everybody's body is unique.
Now, what do you think being, kind of into spirituality yourself, the connection between like chakras and different emotions and different ailments, I guess?
So the chakra system is a part of the Vedic ancestry, and it's just one way of looking at an entire whole. So the way that I look at the body, I don't use the chakra system. I'm very familiar with it, and once in a while I will experience something on the table with a client who needs something in that energy center, and I tend to call them energy centers, but um the chakra system is very real if that's how you want to approach looking at your energy and your body and your mental and spiritual health. That is one way of looking at those things. And that's like one guideline or one way into it. The way that I look at things, I treat every person as a unique case. I don't try to memorize information and then apply it to them.
Okay.
We go in and explore and figure out, like the client figures out what the heck is going on inside their own body. I'm not telling them. So a lot of the times I will be just as surprised as they are or learning the connections as they are. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I was just curious because I know sometimes, with the chakras, like if someone has a problem with their digestive, sometimes that's a solar plexus issue, so they can like work
Yeah.
on that or do Reiki on that. Or so I
And
was
that's
just curious what your thoughts were on that.
yeah, that is absolutely one way to access it. 100%.
Yeah.
And I would bet on the fact that those patterns throughout, I mean, the Vedic system and that ancestry is, gosh, 4 or 5 thousand years old. It's very
Wow.
old,
Yeah.
very old.
Wow.
It's the oldest thing that we have
Yeah.
known to like humanity. So I 100% believe that they have absolutely gathered patterns throughout the centuries and then, or millennia, and then they, were able to create some kind of guideline out of that. So
Yeah.
100% that is a great way to access all of this stuff is through that system. I don't access it that way because I have a terrible memory. And I have read a lot about the chakra systems,
Yeah.
and I can
Yeah.
tell you like two things that I remember from it. So I started to just do my own like intuitive way of doing things and
Yeah.
using the tactics of my like Celtic ancestry and nature to be able to
Yeah.
see these things in people. And I don't associate it with any like areas or
Yeah.
places in the body like that.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
just curious.
Yeah.
How does someone tell if they have like stored trauma or unresolved emotions? Like how would someone be able to kind of recognize that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different symptoms. My favorite one to talk about is if you are walking around with feeling irritated or angry and it's always like a low key, like a low buzz in your life, that is definitely a sign that something needs to get moved in your body or in your energy. Dealing with feelings of jealousy, trigger wounds like that when something's triggering you and you don't even want to be feeling that way. You're like, why am I
Yeah.
feeling like this? I don't want to
Yeah.
feel this way. I just want to be happy for them or whatever. That's a good tall tale sign. Literally walking around with physical pain can be a sign. Let's see. In my research, the constipation was across the board. Uh, a lot of uterus issues, like issues within the uterus or pelvic area. So walking, like dealing with chronic situations like that. So if you have a lot of chronic inflammation or autoimmune issues, that's another sign that you've been holding on and burying something. Thyroid. If you are feeling off energetically, like tired, off, and all these symptoms they can also be signs of something else. And also, I want to add, I don't override medical, like actual medical issues by saying, oh, you just need to, process something somatically and then that illness will go away.
Right. Yeah.
It, I do believe that burying emotions are at the root of a lot of our illnesses. But just because something caused it doesn't mean you should ignore like proper medical attention first before you start digging into the spiritual aspects of what the heck is going on too. I just want to put that disclaimer out there for people who are dealing with serious like chronic issues
Yeah.
like my migraines for example.
I read a book and it's called It's Not Your Fault and I just got done. I think it's Alex Howard. I think it's Alex Howard. And it was really, really good. And he's a psychologist and he suffered from chronic fatigue for the longest time. They could
Yeah.
never figure out what caused it. It was just like kind of idiopathic. No one knew. And here, the more he really started to dig to the root of his trauma, that's
Mm-hmm.
what was causing his chronic fatigue because his
Yeah.
body was living in a fight or flight
Yeah.
state and he had all this like, this chaotic childhood and this he's always worried about things or anxious, and he had all this stored trauma. And he said once he really started to process it, his
Yeah.
chronic fatigue went away. And that was a lot. That was like the basis of one of them of his practice was to help people with chronic illnesses that weren't diagnosed, by a doctor, that
Yeah.
they would come to him. And like you said, migraines, chronic migraines, chronic fatigue was big because he had that. But a lot of people seen a reduction in either migraines or how they felt, or
Yeah.
just by
Yeah.
digging into the root of the trauma, if they were willing and able to do that.
Yeah, and the one thing I do love about somatic processing too, because you asked earlier about the difference between therapy and somatic processing, you don't have to talk about what happened to process somatically. So if you're dealing with a situation where you have sexual trauma or something equally terrible that you don't want to revisit mentally and talk about it one more time, Somatic processing is an amazing way to honor your body and move these things up and out without having to relive telling the story again and again and again.
So like as a coach, like how would you like what kind of practices would you do with your clients to help them move through that without like talking about it?
Yeah, so and you can like the invitation is always there to talk about it if you want to. Of
Sure.
course, it helps me to have the whole story, but but somatic processing is a great opportunity for people who just can't, like they just can't talk about it one more time, right? So what we do is we would talk about whatever you needed to talk about first, and then we go into a theta brainwave state and I talk you into that. I call them journeys, but it's a meditation. So I talk you into this guided meditation, and then we get to a point where the client takes over because then I'm like, okay, what are you seeing or feeling here? And then the client begins to describe what they're seeing or feeling. And I've never experienced it where the person was reliving the trauma. It's always
Yeah.
something kind of symbol or something like, oh, I see a black dot with purple hearts in it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
whatever the client ends up seeing, but it's never reliving the situation. And then what we do is we allow these symbols or these feelings, whatever's happening in your body, to move through it. But I'm there as a guide so you don't go down some kind of dark tunnel or get caught into a whirlwind, stuck in re-traumatizing yourself or opening up too much. As a guide, I'm constantly paying attention to and reading what you're feeling, what you're going through, what you're doing, and how you're reacting to it to know, can we go deeper or do we need to stay here or do we need to back out? And then, once we're trying to process the symbols or the feelings that you're having in your body, we'll use breath work, we'll use like body movement, a lot of like shoulders, back. Last week, I had a client who had to get on the floor and just kind of like yoga is like cat cow and then lay
Yeah.
on their back and
Yeah.
they were just kind of moving around on the floor. Um, Basically, it's honoring what movement your body needs in order to regulate, come back to center, and discharge whatever it is that it's been holding on to.
Yeah. I mean, I love our sessions when we actually can get into that because
Yeah.
I think, I've had some guided meditations before that were like, just not my thing, not my thing.
Yeah.
But I've always loved our guided meditations and I'm, me being such a visual person, it's so um what's the word? Um, I'll just
Visceral, like
yeah,
real.
yeah,
It's real. And I
yeah,
think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I really do believe that one of my biggest purposes in life was to be able to hold space for people. And that doesn't sound so profound, but when you're the one who had the opportunity to get that space held and you walk away feeling like you literally let something go, it's it's so amazing. It's such
yeah,
a great feeling. And I think that that's why I call them journeys because the space that I open up, it's not just a guided meditation. I'm channeling everything that we're doing and I'm taking us, it's a shamanic journey is where we go. So we're in a different world. And I know that
yeah.
sounds funny, but if
No,
you
but
haven't
that's how it
experienced it,
feels.
you're like, she's
Yeah,
she's crazy, but it's true.
yeah.
And coming back sometimes can be a bummer. You're
Yes.
like, I don't wanna.
Yes. You're like, and you're gonna come back. I'm like, no.
No, I want to stay here all
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
I love the somatic experience process, and I am a huge advocate for bringing our body into therapy and not just, working for the mind, but it's also this is not a matter of like, oh, it's somatic versus um talk therapy. I really do admire talk therapy, and there are a lot of times where I'm working with a client and I say, I think it's time, like, yes, I can help you in these ways, but I think you also need to get a therapist on board too.
Yeah.
And then I always like to know if somebody is in therapy, I always like to know how was your last visit? What'd you guys
Yeah.
do? What'd you talk about? Because it's important in being able to move things from your body as well. And sometimes there's things that the therapist and the client had opened up that just could use a little push from the somatic side too. So I
Yeah.
do encourage both.
Yeah, I mean, I do both. I do both talk
Yeah.
therapy and you, but I find it interesting because sometimes it's reversed for me. So our sessions, sometimes I don't know how I'm feeling, and then with our sessions, with the journey that I go on, things will come up, and I say, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's
Yeah.
going on," and then I bring that to my therapist.
Yes,
So it works both ways, and it's been
it does.
literally, honestly, like life-saving.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
the way that, or this is my hope, that someday when we go to therapy, you'll get somebody who's trained in all of it. Like,
Yeah.
it's always on my mind every day. Like, okay, next I got to get my master's degree in counseling therapy. But I'm like, I'm working on my PhD right now. I
Right.
can't
Yeah.
do these
Yeah,
two things at the
you
same
just I love that
time.
you're just
So,
like goals, goals, goals.
yeah. So I do believe that just being in the field that I am in and seeing the things that I see, I know it's going to get there someday. Maybe
Yeah,
not for us, but maybe our kids or our kids' kids.
yeah,
So yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah.
How can someone use this in their daily life? Like maybe if they're seeing you once a month or they just do one session, like is there anything someone can do just daily for thematic processing or just kind of being aware?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of bringing in and honoring your body and as a part of your decision-making process. Um, so an example of that is I personally deal with my migraines are my teacher in that I am doing too much and I need to back off, right?
Right.
Mentally, I can handle a lot. I have a ton of energy. I'm going for my PhD. I'm working on growing a business. I'm also working on the side to fund all these things that I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so my mind is on board, but I have to also honor and engage and listen to my body when I'm doing all of these things. So when I get knocked on my butt with a migraine, I know, okay, I was a little irresponsible with my body this month. Like, what can I do next month to involve my body in the decision making process? So that means I have to give some shifts away at work. I can't be lifting weights before a double. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
have to start making decisions that involve my body as well. So that's just an example, but I would say start incorporating your body and listening to it. And it all starts with simple exercise at night or in the morning. Okay, how am I feeling? What's happening in my body? And if you're not feeling anything, keep trying because it'll eventually start talking to you. And you could, again, bring your awareness to different parts. Like, okay, what am I feeling in my arm? What am I feeling in my left arm? What am I feeling in my chest? And then just now, even talking to you, I'm thinking, oh, I'm not feeling anything. And then I realize my upper back hurts. So we get distracted so easily. It's so easy, but if you just take that time, your body will start talking to you. And then your interoception, which is being able to sense what's happening in your body before it reaches some type of sickness or reaction, um, that will sharpen. And then you'll be able to feel better longer or function optimally because you have that relationship with your body and you can feel when something's going to be off before it turns into something bad like a cold or a migraine or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. My upper back hurts too, so I'm wondering if you're
Picking it up off of you.
I was like, oops. So I want to talk a little bit about like anxiety and decision making in connection with like, somatic processing because I know a ton of people, probably all of us in some aspect suffer with anxiety. And for myself, I think prior to my healing, my anxiety was probably at an 8. And like you said, I was one of those people that was irritable and angry and just frustrated, and I never understood why until I started to heal. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's just trauma because I have, talk about anxiety, I have a fighter, my fight or flight response is fight always. I'll Like I'm always like ready to
Yeah,
go.
I'm the same way. Yep.
Yeah, and so, with how can like somatic processing help with that?
So one of the really cool things that I was really excited to learn, and the reason why I was excited to learn is because a lot of my clients have panic attacks. And panic attacks, there's a difference between a panic attack and an anxiety attack, but they're in the same wavelength as far as like body goes and what I'm about to talk about. So, panic attack is when you all of a sudden have that attack and you feel like you're going to die and you don't understand where it's coming from. There's no obvious trigger. Right. And an anxiety attack usually happens with an obvious trigger or your thoughts. You were going down some kind of rabbit hole and then you gave yourself anxiety and now you're having an anxiety attack. I've done that before.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
same.
I loved that I found out that panic attacks happen with emotional suppression.
Mm,
And if you have years of suppressing your emotions built up in your body, unprocessed emotions, you're going to have anxiety and you're going to have panic attacks. And I was excited to learn that because
yeah,
that unlocked so much for me of like, okay, then somatic processing absolutely helps with reducing anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. Now, everyone's different where their anxiety comes from, so I can't say like, oh, this is why, but I'm just glad you brought that up because yes, let's go back to the idea that we don't have any proof that the mind is in your brain. So if you think about it for a minute, let's just say that your mind is your body, even though that's a weird concept, but let's
yeah,
just say it is. So if you are going to bury your emotions or anything that's happening in your mind, which is your body for this example, why wouldn't you have anxiety? Of course, that's going to cause anxiety, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah,
when you say healing, everybody's definition of that is different. And for me, the work that I do and in our conversation today, that means processing your trauma, processing some things that have been buried, especially in your subconscious. That's another thing that we're doing when we go on our journeys and work in the theta wave,
hmm,
we are working a lot in the subconscious. So that's why you have revelations like, oh, that's why I've been feeling that way. Because your
yeah,
body's storing it, especially if you have gone through situations where you couldn't handle it. It was like too much for your personal psyche and resilience. And then dissociation happens and you just
yep,
push it into your subconscious or push it into your body and either forget or try to forget.
yeah,
So if you think about it, the more you do something like that, you're irritating your whole system. So it is, I see anxiety as like a low key, like a buzz that's always happening in the background.
mm,
So if you're out of balance and, storing, shoving down your emotions and not processing them would definitely put you out of balance. That would cause a buzz in the background all the time, you know?
yeah. Would that be the same as having an unregulated nervous system? Is that kind of similar when you
Yes.
store trauma and you're doing somatic processing? Like, is that trying to regulate your nervous system? Is that connected?
Yeah, it does. So somatic work does regulate your nervous system. Absolutely 100%. Because what happens is when we experience an emotion and we cut it off and we
Yeah,
bury it, you are not allowing your body to complete its natural cycle. And we work in cycles. Like think about it. The planets, the earth, the
yeah,
moon, humans, like women, we have our cycles. Like everything is a cycle. So if you cut your body off and you don't let it finish the cycle, it's bound to cause nervous system issues.
mm,
So when you do somatic work and you allow it to come back out and finish its process,
yeah.
you're taking one less thing off your plate or one less thing that's causing your anxiety buzz in the background, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, I my anxiety used to be so bad, but it's decreased drastically. I mean, like I said, I think we're all human, so we all suffer somewhat, with anxiety. But to actually, do the work that we've been doing and the work I do with, my therapist Danae and the work I do, with myself has
Girl,
been
yeah. What do you think?
exponential.
What do you think? I feel like I know the answer, but I just want you to tell us, like, what do you think is the one thing, the one reason why you feel better? Like, what changed?
A lot. Just, I didn't realize I was even storing trauma.
Yeah.
I thought I was fine. But I really think starting to heal and going deep into my trauma and trying to figure out all this conditioning that has been put on to us, that
Yeah.
dealing with that has really really helped. Being like, we turn into the people that we're conditioned to turn into. We are conditioned by our parents, and I've talked about this before, but our parents, our teachers, our friends, even our parents grow up and they're like, oh, you should do this because we did this, so we're going to teach you to do this. And then teachers are like, oh, we're taught to teach you like this, so learn this. And then when we grow up, we're like, well, who are we? So it's like, so I think unlearning the conditions that have been placed upon me and finding out who I
Yeah.
am and dealing with my
Yes.
trauma were probably the two like key points.
Yes.
And being
That is
self-aware.
exact. No, that is exactly it. Your true self.
Yeah.
Yep.
Free
That's
soul.
yes.
Living
I love
authentically,
it. I love
you
it.
know?
So, you finding your true self and living authentically has greatly reduced your anxiety, and somatic processing helped you discover that part of yourself.
1,000%. I think a lot of women, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like that people pleasing is a big
Mhm. Yeah.
issue specifically in women. I have friends that are people pleasers, and I feel like it's mainly women that they don't really have a sense of self. It's like they kind of do, but they're conforming to what other people want from them, and I think that's a
Mhm.
really big problem. I don't know how we got into people
It is.
pleasing, but
No,
but
it's perfect because that
yeah,
came out in my research, the people
yeah,
pleasing piece, and they do it. It's happening because it's the only way they feel safe. They were taught that their true self, their emotions were too big, whatever, and they were punished for it in some kind of way.
right.
So the only way they feel safe is by people pleasing. And so when you asked earlier, like, what are the symptoms that you've been, that you could use some somatic processing, even things like that, people pleasing, overdoing, being the caretaker. So there's mental consequences that come with it too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, I'm sure for you too, but I mean, you talked about it a little bit, like burnout, like being busy,
Yeah.
trying to stay busy, busy, busy. Sometimes you can't help it because I have things going on, you have things
Yeah.
going on, so we can't just
Yeah.
drop them, but sometimes we have to, but you know,
Yeah. My body tells me when I get a migraine, that's it. Like,
yeah.
okay. And
And I'll get sick. Like I'll get a
yeah,
cold or I'll get,
you do.
and I do want to talk about that too, when we get colds, because someone just said to me, "You're always sick." And I said, "It's just because I'm busy." And my guides are like, "Yo, slow down."
Slow
Sometimes
down.
we do need rest. And a lot
Yeah.
of times, I'm not saying, obviously there's a medical aspect to it. If you're feeling low or
Yeah.
whatever, you can catch a cold if your immune system's down. But also sometimes spiritually, like you just need rest. And that is God, the universe, whoever your higher power is just saying, just rest. And it forces you to lay
Yes,
in
it
bed and
does.
cancel things that
It does.
you normally wouldn't, to just
Yeah.
chill. And now I take it now, I'm like, okay, I understand. I'll just go lay in bed. It's hard, but
Yeah.
we do it.
It is hard. I had
Yeah.
to get myself an Aura ring so that I could read my own data,
Oh, no,
so I
yeah.
could learn
Yeah.
how to slow down because I don't know how to do that
Yeah,
naturally.
no, me either. Me either.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. Yeah, it's
It's a
fine.
it's true. It's a real thing. And that's how I
Yeah.
knew, like, I have people who do what I do, so we'll book sessions with each other every so often because nobody is immune to this. Like, sure,
Yeah.
I practice
Yeah.
it, but I gotta actually go and get my own therapy. Like,
Yeah.
and for the space that I hold for people, I can't just keep collecting things and then not moving it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
true, it's a real thing. And
Yeah.
like you getting sick or my migraines or my teacher. Um, but that's another way in which people can start growing that somatic experience in their life is by listening when they get sick or something,
Yeah.
actually do something about it. Like question why, why am I sick or what's happening here? Does something need to
Yeah.
change? Like for me, I got a migraine last month. I had to go to the ER because it just would not let up. And that was a big sign for me. Like something needs to change. You can't keep up like this. So
Yeah.
you have to choose that connection with your body, but it's there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we
Yeah.
all have it. Mind body connection. We just be aware of it and work on it.
Well, it's been an honor. I had a lot of
Yeah.
fun today. Thank you for having me on your
Oh
show.
my
So
gosh,
excited.
yes. So I usually pull a card. So there's
Did
two of them.
17
So
fall
I'm
out?
just
Oh,
gonna read. What?
I was like, did 17 fall out? Because
No,
that would
no,
happen to
no,
you and me. Now I gotta sit here and read them all.
no. Okay, so there's two. So I'm just gonna read both of them. So this one says, wisdom is knowing who to be and what to do in any given situation. Virtue is acting on that wisdom.
Aw.
And then this one says, we should not fear an obsession for building a great free life.
Oh my God, both of
Hell
those
yeah.
things were very relevant for us today. I love that.
Yes.
I almost cried at the first one.
Yeah, spirit's always, I'm telling you, always on point. Every time I do a card pull, it's like the theme with the episode.
Yeah.
So it's
Aw,
funny.
I love that.
All right, Bridge. Well, thanks for coming on again.
Thank you for
This has been
having me. This was an
great.
absolute pleasure.
Yeah. And I'll see you next Thursday.
Okay, I'll see you next Thursday. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.